what is the problem, right? Especially with our young boys, right? Our young boys who not only are subjecting themselves to suicide, but they aren't doing well in school. They get with not so good crowds and make poor decisions. You have to ask yourself, man, what is the issue? What is the problem? And I think the genesis of the problem starts with these homes that fathers aren't existent. I feel like there is a stronghold on men in particular, right? And obviously boys grow into men, and the things that boys experience while they develop and are in their adolescent stages, it carries over into their adult life. At least for my generation, like we grew up where we didn't have cell phones, right? We didn't have computers, right? We had to talk, we had to communicate verbally and physically with people. And so that forced us to develop or enhance our social skills. But kids nowadays, like, they don't. And that's what little boys need to hear, right? That's what they need to see. They need that reinforcing words from a male figure in their life, in particular their fathers, saying that it's okay to be emotional. Emotions, all of us as human beings, we experience emotions. And being emotional isn't a bad thing when it comes to men. We just need to make sure that we're able to manage our emotions. We have to be very particular and specific about not only what we say to our kids and how we teach our kids, but what we do around them, right? And what they observe us doing. As iron sharpens iron, so does men sharpen each other. And that's what it's about. That's what it should be about, right? Us being able to commune as men and build relationships with each other so that we can better each other. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the new episode of the Myles podcast. This is Myles Jr. I'm your host. And as always, the vision and goal of this podcast is to entertain, educate, and elevate you miles high above your fears, your doubts, and any limitations that you may think exist, always knowing that those limitations only exist in your mind. So for starters, I want to announce that we are officially back on track with our Explore Africa tour. We're going to Johannesburg and Cape Town this year. I'm super excited. Took a year off, obviously, because I was minding the birth of my daughter. So we took some time off for that, but we're back at it this year. The dates are November 20th to the 30th, all right, 2025. We start, we're going to be visiting the countries of the country of South Africa, but the cities of Johannesburg and Cape Town. I'm excited. We're going to dive into the culture of the country, eat a lot of the food that they have to offer there, meet a lot of the locals there. Man, it's just going to be a great experience. I've been doing this for the better part of about 11 years now, but I've been going to the continent for over 20 years, 25 years even. And it's just been always a great experience. I've always seen and learned something new whenever I'm there. So I want to encourage, if you have never been to the continent of Africa, if you've never been to the country of South Africa, and you want to tap into the history, the culture, and what they have to offer there, join us on our Explore Africa tour. You can find out more information on our website. So it's exploreafricatour.com. All the itinerary and pricing and information will be there for you to observe and notate so that you'll be joining us later this year. All right, so I'll see you in November. We're going to have a great time, and hopefully it won't be your last experience with us. All right, I want to talk about sort of a heavy subject for this episode. So recently, my wife and I were watching this new TV show that has become popular, or like a large talking point in the culture. And we knew about it for a little while, didn't really pay attention to it. Then just one of those times where we had some time to sit down and actually enjoy a show, and we decided to watch it. So the show's name is Adolescence. It's on Netflix. It's a Netflix show. It's a 4 episodes short series, limited series. And I must say, what I thought the show was going to be about, the show absolutely was not about. Right. So the premise of the show is there's this kid that is in, I think it's like middle school or junior high school. It's based in the UK. It's a middle school or junior high school. He kills a classmate or a student within the school. So it starts off with him getting arrested, them going through that whole process of booking him and checking him into the jail. And then it's the whole process of finding out, okay, let's see what this kid did, and them trying to figure out why he did it. And throughout this entire process, this theme just kept reoccurring to me, man. And it had a lot to do with men, right? And the importance of men in the lives of kids, especially, not just in our communities, but kids. And throughout, the 4 episodes, it just started to, see this trend of men not being a part of, or not seemingly being a part of, like, their kids' lives, and like knowing exactly what's going on, knowing the emotions that they're going through, what they're experiencing at school, whether they're being bullied, teased, whether they're doing well, not doing so good. It's important that men are present. And this kid, you could tell that the kid on the show held his dad in high esteem. And there was a point in the show where there was an interaction with, the kid described an interaction first where I think he was playing football, European football, and he wasn't doing so well on the field, and I think he might have messed up a play or missed a shot or missed a goal or something like that. And he looked towards his dad, and he talked about how his dad, anytime he messed up, his dad never looked at him in his face, never, but when he did well, he always shouted encouraging terms to him, like, good job, you're doing good, like, keep it up, whatever. When he doesn't do well, his dad avoided eye contact, didn't say anything, no words of encouragement. And you learn that registered with this kid from that time, right? So fast forward now to him going through this situation where he murdered a fellow student, a female. They're going through the process of kind of talking with him, like, finding out what's going on, why did this happen, and his dad being there, and just his dad. So when so they start off with, if you haven't seen the show, I don't want to spoil it for you, so you may want to, like, fast forward this part, all right? Because I'm just going to give this part of the show because of the importance of this particular scene. So they went through the whole questioning and asking the kid, like, where were you? What time were you there? Like, trying to get his whereabouts on the night in question or the day in question. And they went through all of that. The kid was denying it. There was a point where the officers left the room, the interrogation room, and the kid and his dad was in there. And his dad looked at him and was like, look, just tell me if you did this, right? Did you do this or didn't you do this? And the kid was like, I didn't do it. And his dad, trusts his kid, loves his kid so much that he just believes what he says, and wouldn't have thought that his kid would have been or could have been this type of person, right? So to him, this is just a mistake. You just need to tell the truth, and we're gonna get through this. So they come back in the room, and they ask a few more questions, trying to get the kid to verbally confess to what he's done. The kid keeps denying it, and then they pull a computer out and be like, okay, we got CCTV, we got footage of this incident. So they show the kid following the young girl. They show a confrontation of them in, like, this parking lot, and then they show the kid actually committing the crime. And when I tell you, it devastated his dad. Like, again, his dad couldn't look at him, like, was just, I guess, so disappointed and so distraught and shocked, I would imagine. And so the entire, after, from that point on in the show, it just shows, like, the father and how he dealt with the situation. And it just had me thinking, while I was watching that. And then, in addition to that, there were a lot of conversations, I'd say, that my friends and I have been having over the last couple of weeks or months I'm a new father, so I can relate a lot more with my friends who have kids, and we talk a lot about the importance of, in particular, the men, right, the fathers in the lives of these kids, and I see it reoccurring so much that I'm just reminded that fathers are important, and that's what I wanted to talk about today. What I want to talk about today, I want to talk about building better men, right? The blueprint for the next generation. Men account for 75% of suicide cases globally. Even in the Bahamas, here where I'm from, where I live, there's been an uptick in suicides, not just for men, like for men and women, but there has been an increase in suicide for young adults, right? Kids, teenagers, young adults. And I think we're getting to the point where we're raising a generation of men who don't know who they are, they don't know what they stand for, and they don't know why they matter. And when you hear a lot of these stories of these kids committing suicide, right? Young boys, young girls, the reason a lot of the times is they don't feel like they matter, right? They don't feel like they're seen. They don't feel appreciated. They don't feel accepted. And it's just causing this decrease in confidence, this decrease in the desire to even live, right? To where they get to the point where they want to commit suicide, to kill themselves. And you have to ask yourself, man, what is the problem, right? Especially with our young boys, right? Our young boys who not only are subjecting themselves to suicide, but they aren't doing well in school. They aren't, they get with not so good crowds and make poor decisions. You have to ask yourself, man, what is the issue? What is the problem? And I think, the genesis of the problem starts with these homes that fathers aren't existent, and just because a father is present doesn't mean a father exists, right? Like, you can't be a father, or you shouldn't want to be a father who just provides, right? You provide a house over the kid's head, you provide finances for the kids to eat and go to school and have clothes and stuff. Like, it's a lot more to fathering. Because, the problem with most kids, and in particular young boys, I'm going to focus on young boys, but, it's obviously not isolated just to boys, right? It's boys and girls. But I feel like there is a stronghold on men in particular, right? And obviously boys grow into men, and the things that boys experience while they develop and are in their adolescent stages, it carries over into their adult life. And this is why this has been a snowballing effect, to where things might not have been as bad 20 years ago, 25 years ago, the way they are now, right? To the point where men are just depressed. They don't know who they are. They can't identify themselves outside of what others say, what society says. Do you feel like there's more to life than what you're experiencing? That deep down, you're meant for something greater? It's time to stop wondering and start discovering. At the Munroe Institute of Leadership, we believe every person carries a unique purpose, a calling designed specifically for you. Our transformative courses, Discover Purpose and Unlock Your Potential, are crafted to help you uncover that purpose and equip you with the tools to step confidently into your destiny. These powerful courses are for leaders, entrepreneurs, students, and visionaries like you. Through proven principles and actionable insights, you will clarify your vision and set bold goals. You will identify your strengths and passions. You will overcome the barriers holding you back, and you will step boldly into your God-given potential. Our expert facilitators draw from timeless and tested principles, blending practical strategies with kingdom truths to empower you to lead a life of purpose, impact, and transformation. The world needs what you have to offer. Don't let another day pass without unlocking the greatness within you. Visit our website, themill.org, and register today. The Munroe Institute of Leadership. Renew your mind and transform a generation. And that's part of the problem, right? There's this identity confusion, right? Men don't know who men are supposed to be, right? There's a rise in male depression, addiction, and loneliness. I think a lot of it has stemmed from our experience through the COVID era, right? We had a year where in 2020 where everyone was isolated, right? We were excluded to our homes. We couldn't travel and we couldn't get out much. And coming back from COVID, like getting readjusted into some type of normalcy as far as the real world is concerned. There's been this uptick in remote work, and I guess it's a good thing from a certain perspective, but I think some men and some people in general just need community, right? They need to be around, they need to interact, they need to be able to talk to and be able to experience and be able to like socialize, and I think this era of remote working has really caused a sense of isolation, right? Where there's now this sense of loneliness. And I think social media has a lot to do with that as well, right? We are so gung-ho on our experiences in this digital era where we don't have conversations anymore. And I'll be the first to admit that, if I have the option to talk to someone on the phone or text someone, my go-to is text. Like usually when I receive a call, I'm like, yo, I'm sure you could have sent a text. Send this to me in a text. Like why do we need to have a conversation? It's almost like to the point where I hate having phone calls, right? Or it's just easier to communicate over text. And if I'm feeling that way, imagine a generation where all they know is texting and social media. At least for my generation, like we grew up where we didn't have cell phones, right? We didn't have computers, right? We had to talk, we had to communicate verbally and physically with people, and so that forced us to develop or enhance our social skills. But kids nowadays, like they don't. You could, streaming has taken over, right? Especially with the youth and the desire for kids to want to stream, whether you're a gamer, you're in real life type of streamer where you just go through your everyday life on camera for people to watch and consume. And it's all entertainment and it's all good, but it's isolation, right? It's loneliness, and kids can't. I don't think there's a development of their social skills being in front of a camera 24/7, right? You log online, and these kids aren't even aware of the dangers that streaming presents. Like I was watching this news story about these group of girls that were streamers, and they were out streaming in public. And obviously when you stream, you basically tell people where you are and when you are and where you are at the time that you're there. And this guy showed up and just caused some tension, right? And it was almost an issue, right? Thankfully, it didn't get as bad as it could have gotten. But the point is, like, these kids don't think of the consequences to like these advancements in technology, right? They don't think about their safety. They don't think about the people that they don't know who they're letting into their lives, that could harm them, right? If the opportunity presented itself. But all of it creates this sense of loneliness, right? Because you are secluded and isolated to your homes, to your rooms. You don't have much interaction with humans, actual individuals, like in person, physical interaction. And you just develop this sense of anxiety for the most part when even being in public. Now, for me, being an introvert and already being an anxious person, like I have anxiety now, like having to have conversations in public. But imagine a kid who that's all he knows, right? All he knows is seclusion, isolation, doesn't really talk much, very quiet, might be introverted as well. And then you force them, in a sense, to go out and create friends or create experiences when they haven't developed the skills to do so, right? That could be a shock, and it could create it can cause larger problems to form because of the anxiety that builds. So that, there's a sense of just this disconnection from life itself, right? And again, that causes a rise in depression, addiction, and loneliness. Also, the problem stems from just disconnecting from what our purpose is and from our faith. I personally feel that it's important for us to not only be grounded in a higher being, right, our spirituality, but using that to discover who we are and why we are, right? I'm truly under the belief, or of the belief, that it's impossible for us to know to know who we are and why we are if we don't have a connection, a spiritual connection, if we don't exercise some type of faith and belief in a higher power. And a lot of the times, men in particular, like, we disconnect from that purpose, we disconnect from faith because of what society has been teaching us and what society teaches us. And I just think all of this lends to the issues that we have, this male crisis that we're experiencing. And then society just celebrates everything outside of healthy masculinity. We live in a world where, like, we're pushing all of these agendas, man. We have these homosexual agendas. We have these transgender agendas. We have this female-centered agenda. And it's all good, right? I'm all about inclusivity, right? And as long as we aren't trying to force it on anyone, by all means, do what it is that you feel like you want to do. I feel like it, whether I agree with it or not, I think the freedom should be there for folks to live the life that they want to live, as long as they aren't harming anyone, as long as they aren't, like I said, forcing themselves on others. But when the media is pushing this, right, and that's all they're pushing, right, and we don't have examples of sound men of character who can show kids, like, what it is to be a man and how men should act and operate in public, right? All you see is these women bashing men, or these segment of society these men who bash segments of society that they don't agree with, and they do it violently. They do it with derogatory words and phrases, and there's just a sense of abuse, right? Verbal abuse, physical abuse, and it's what stems from us just society not really highlighting men, right? And pushing men to the forefront, and good men to the forefront, right? I'm not just talking about any man, right? Because obviously there are men included in all of these different segments of the population that I mentioned, but I'm talking about the healthy masculinity. Even in the TV shows that we watch, movies that we watch, there's this push for homosexuality. There's this push for just sexuality in and of itself, and all of this is causing these developments, these mental developments, or the lack thereof, in our youth. And I think the reason is the kids just don't have a great example for men, as they should, as we used to, right? Because we used to have a lot of censorship in the networks that we watch, right? TV used to be way more censored than it is today. Movies used to be way more censored than they were today. And parents were a lot more conscious of, like, what we watched and listened to as kids. Parents nowadays, like, I assume it's because of what we went through and what we disagreed with when we were young. And we don't want our kids to not be able to see and watch things just because they're kids, right? We want to introduce them to these ideas and these societal experiences at an early age, not realizing that it takes a sense of maturity, it takes a sense of development for these kids to really understand, like, what they're experiencing. So that's, I feel like those are kind of what the problems are, right? Just a brief highlight of some of the problems that I feel like men are going through, especially when we talk about the reason why the society and the world is where it is now. And I think as men, we are taught that we have to be strong, right? And, growing up for me, like strength, the definition of strength was men don't cry, men take care of the women and children, we put ourselves in danger, we provide, all of these masculine, quote unquote, things that are characteristics that we have been taught, that I've been taught, when I was growing up, of what strength was supposed to be. But actual strength, like once you develop and you start to learn things for yourself, you realize that strength deals a lot more with resilience, or being resilient, having integrity, being a person of good character, having a good sense of discipline in things that we do, and how we carry ourselves. And then just being a person of compassion, right? That's what strength is. Strength is knowing when you need to be what you need to be, right? It's not always being a dictator or not always forcing things on people, but it's showing different levels of emotion when necessary. And, men are supposed to show emotions, right? Men shouldn't hide their emotions. We just need to learn to manage them. So whether we're upset, whether we're happy, whether we're angry, it's normal, right? Those are normal emotions. And if you want to cry, if you want to scream, if you want to laugh, you should be able to experience all of those. But as men, we're taught that, we shouldn't be emotional creatures, right? Emotions are for women. Only women show emotions. It reminds me of a video that I saw that came across my timeline, and it was about this young rap artist who he was with his kid. I think his kid had to have been about 2 or 3 years old, or maybe 3 or 4 years old. And his kid, the rapper was streaming at the time, and he wanted his kid to talk to the audience and whatnot. And his kid started to talk to the audience, and then I guess the kid got flustered and just got embarrassed and started to cry, right? And fell back into his dad's arm, and his dad immediately said, "Yo, what you crying for? Don't cry, man. It's okay. You're feeling a sense of anxiety. You're getting flustered with your words. It's all right. And it's okay to cry. You could get emotional. Cry if you need to cry. Daddy cries all the time, and there's nothing wrong with it." And I looked at that, and this was a young rap artist, right? He, in his 20s, and seeing that, that was encouraging for me, right? Because that's what, and it was his son that he was talking to, right? And that's what little boys need to hear, right? That's what they need to see. They need that reinforcing words from a male figure in their life, in particular their fathers, saying that it's okay to be emotional. Emotions, all of us as human beings, we experience emotions. And being emotional isn't a bad thing when it comes to men. We just need to make sure that we're able to manage our emotions. And then being vulnerable, right? I don't think any man likes to be vulnerable, especially when it comes to relationships, right? Because we feel if we're vulnerable, we're opening the door for our vulnerability to be taken advantage of. But it isn't weakness, right? Being vulnerable is actually being wise. And that's kind of what Harrison and I talked about in an earlier pod, right? You find the most convenient way to be strategically weak. And it's not a bad thing, right? It's just figuring out, okay, I need to manage my emotions at the best way I can. And men need to do more than provide, right? We've been taught that we need to be strong, we need to be providers. And it's not just about finance, right? We need to provide a sense of structure in the home. My dad used to always say, as the men goes the country, or goes the community, or goes the family, right? And it's a sense of the men being the foundation of the family, not the head, right? We learn these terms, and I feel like words are powerful, right? Words have meaning. And yes, man should be the head of the home, but I think more importantly, man should be the foundation of the home, the base that everything is built on, right? And he's holding everything up. He's holding the wife up. He's holding the kids up. He's holding the morale, the ethics, the character, everything that he should be about and should be instilling in his family and guiding his family towards. It's on him. And when men shouldn't just show up, right? It's not just a sense of finance for them, right? They need to be more of an emotional presence, a spiritual leader, and spending quality time with kids. We can't be so inundated with work or trying to provide, right? In a sense of trying to make money. Now, I'm not saying that being able to work and make money to provide for your family isn't important, but there has to be a balance. Absolutely has to be a balance. And most kids, like, you can tell a kid, give a kid instructions as much as you want, but most kids learn from observation, right? And we are very critical when we observe. But when I say that, I particularly mean, like, if you tell the kid something, but they observe you doing the opposite, then what you're telling them is going to be contradictory, right? And they're going to say, well, you do this way, even though you tell me to do this. And most parents say, don't do as I do as I say, right? But I don't think that's not a great approach, right? Especially with the access to information that kids have nowadays. We have to be very particular and specific about not only what we say to our kids and how we teach our kids, but what we do around them, right? And what they observe us doing. I think that might be even more important than what it is that we say. I want to introduce you to the Munroe Global app, the ultimate platform to empower your leadership journey and inspire your purpose-filled life. Access timeless teachings designed to help you grow in every area of your life. From leadership development to personal growth, Munroe Global has it all at your fingertips. With the Munroe Global app, you'll have exclusive access to powerful videos and messages from the legendary Dr. Myles Munroe, a digital library packed with life-changing content right at your fingertips, and a vibrant global community of visionaries, leaders, and change makers just like you. Whether you're at home, on the go, or in the office, the Munroe Global app ensures you never miss an opportunity to learn, grow, and lead. Available now on Google Play and the Apple App Store, the Munroe Global app is your gateway to unlocking your potential and impacting your world. Download the Munroe Global app today and take the first steps toward living the life you were born to lead. So, men should, again, be emotionally present and be an emotional presence for their kids, right? Saying it's okay to be emotional, guiding them through their emotions. And then, be a spiritual leader. I think, like I said, spirituality and faith should be number one. I don't think that men or anyone can exist in their true sense of, like, within their purpose and why they're here in life, if they don't have a spiritual relationship with the Creator. And then just being able to spend that quality time with, the family, both wife and kids. And men need to be more of a thermostat and not just a security system. I truly believe that, yes, we're supposed to provide a safe environment and a safe home, but we need to be the gauge, right? We need to be and know when we need to cool things down or we need to heat things up. And it's our job to recognize when those opportunities surface that we need to take a hold of, right, and really control as the foundation of the home. Because we experience this we are experiencing this generational absence of fathers. And my dad used to talk about this all the time, and it's just amazing how I heard about it in, like, scripture, like in church, so like during church service. But then you see the same things being said in society, right? Scientists say it, behavioral therapists say it, family therapists say it. Everyone speaks to this lack of fathers in the home. And, we can pinpoint this issue being started, during the times of slavery. But I truly believe that, there has to come a point where we stop blaming the past, right, and start taking accountability and responsibility for where we are, right? It's up to us to pour into our kids, and if we don't have kids, find a kid to pour into, especially young boys. I'm speaking about young boys in particular because I feel like, as I truly believe what my dad said, as go the man, as goes the country. And if we can start to get these boys from early, right, where they are able to build a sense of confidence, able to build a sense of identity, a positive sense of identity, able to really start to understand who they are and why they exist, and that they do matter, and that their existence is for a reason, right? They're put here to solve a problem and give something back to the world. And if we can get them from early and start putting that encouragement in them, they'll grow into better men, right? And men that carries that trend on for generations to come. I think that for kids who don't have fathers in their homes, there should be a group of mentors, pastors, spiritual leaders, community leaders that they're able to go to learn from, right? Even in our schools, right? Women outnumber men as far as teachers are concerned by a long shot. And I think kids don't see a great representation of men on a day-to-day basis, especially those kids that don't have fathers in the home. And that's why, these kids kind of make the decisions that they make throughout their lives, right? And when defining a man, I always have to go back to the life book, and when God created man, first of all, God created man in his image and likeness. And that means we have the image and likeness and character of God, right? So everything that God is, we are. And that's not just for male, that's for male and female. But men in particular, right? We were made in his image and likeness. And then after God created man, he took man and put man in the Garden of Eden. And the Garden of Eden essentially was the presence of God. And again, we go back to having that spiritual relationship, having that spiritual foundation in our lives. It's important, right? And it's something that, I feel like we've been given the blueprint on how to be a man, right? How God wanted us as men to operate in the world, right? We needed his presence. And then the second thing he gave man was work, right? God told Adam to, spend your time identifying everything that you see in my presence, right, in this garden, and name them. I'm giving you the responsibility to name them. And then the third thing God gave man was a helpmate. And that's when Eve came along. And, a lot of times we change the categories based on how we feel, right? A lot of men, we look for woman before we look for work. And we ignore the presence of God, ignore the spiritual relationship. And I feel that that too has a lot to do with the state of men and where we are in our communities. So that we need to revert back to what God intended for men in particular, right? He intended it for us to be in his presence. He intended it for us to be productive. And then he intended for us to find a helpmate that we can multiply and reproduce and just create generations. If men can get to this point, to get back to that point, I should say, I feel like we'll be able to build our boys, right? Be able to cultivate young men, young boys into men of good character and men of good stature. We need to teach character, right? Not just competence. Like, yes, we want our kids to be well learned, we want them to be smart, but we need to also teach them what good character is. And a lot of that comes with what they observe us doing. And I think the onus is on us as men, as fathers in particular, to raise our kids by showing them how we want them to live. I feel like my parents were such a great example for me, especially now with me having a kid and remembering like the things that I observed my parents doing, what they have taught me, what I've seen them do, even outside of the home, right? In the community, in church, in business. And all of these things have allowed me to develop into the person that I am today. And my wife and I have conversations about this all the time, and how we want to be a good example, not just good parents, right? But we want to lead by being a good example for our daughter and, any of our future kids. Because them being able to observe and confirm what we are saying, because we are also doing it, I think it'll be beneficial, for them and for us and for society at a whole. We need to create environments where vulnerability is a norm, especially for men. A lot of men, like, we don't feel safe being vulnerable. And, social media hasn't helped with that, right? You see a lot of women bashing men for being men, right? Men opening doors, men trying to have conversations, men, and I'm talking about like good conversation, right? Just introducing yourself. Maybe you see a girl that you're interested in, and you go out and talk to her, and the first thing she does is shuts it down, or embarrasses you, or records it and posts it up, and it goes viral. So men just don't feel this desire, doesn't have this desire to be vulnerable or to seem approachable, because we don't want to be embarrassed, right? And we have to create environments where we could be vulnerable. And I think that comes with us creating communities as men, right? Creating these circles, right, as men. And again, Harrison and I had this conversation about this as well, where we need to start creating these men groups where men could come together and have these conversations and talk about the difficulties we're experiencing as men and fathers and leaders in the home, in the community, in our countries, so that we can help each other out, right? And I think that's one of the ways that we can get men back to being how God intended us to be. We need to show how important work is, how important worship is, and how important spiritual warfare is. And I think with all of that, we're able to show ourselves wise. Like I said, God put us in His presence, and He gave us work. Those are two things that we cannot live without, or should not be living without. If we want to be, men in line with what God intended us to be, His presence, or a relationship with Him, and then finding ourselves productive, right? Work is most important. And then just being worshipers. Growing up, raising your hands in church as the song plays, and doing all of this, like, I used to look at that as being like, that's soft, right? And you don't realize that it's actually an experience. And me being young, immature, right? I would chalk it up to just being immature and not having the maturity to know the importance of developing that spiritual relationship. Because I had great examples around me, right? Not just my dad, but other individuals in my family and in the church that I attended. But just from a societal standpoint, just the mentality and the way that we're taught what man is and how men should operate, and what we should do or not do, or say and not say, like, all of this comes in our development, right? And that's why having fathers in the home is so important, right? Because of course your kids are going to be like, when they're in school more hours of the day than they're with you, right? So whatever they're learning, observing, experiencing is shaping who they are. But the key is that when they come home, you're able to curb that experience, or curb what it is that they've been seeing, and shape it into what it should be, right? Like, yes, I'm sure you experienced this, but here's how I want you to look at it. Here's what I want you to get from this. Here's what I really want you to learn as an individual. And it's just up to us as fathers. And I say this because moms do what moms can do, but women can't be fathers. It's so important for men to be in the lives of their kids. Mothers are super important, right? And I'm not taking anything away from mothers, right? They provide. Mothers do what they have to do, and single fathers as well, right? Because I think both the father and mother are important in the home. But there are things that kids need that only a father can provide. And I think as fathers, we need to take the onus on ourselves to be intentional, right? Be present, be aware of who our kids are, right? And the differences that they may have if we have multiple kids, and the special attention that they need, or the special areas that they need that attention in. Because, a high percentage of the issues that we experience in our communities has to do with kids that don't have fathers in the home.
Or now, broken homes in general.
Yeah, I mean, so mothers leaving the home or fathers leaving the home. But I think the larger statistics speaks more to men not being present, right? And I don't want to take anything away from kids that don't have fathers, right? Because you can not have a physical person in your home, but you can still have a father as a mentor. You can still have a father as a spiritual leader. You can still have a father as, an uncle, just a male figure in your life, a coach, a teacher, someone that takes that extra time to assist you in your development, assist young boys in their development. And I think that's where we need to get to as men, right? If we don't have kids personally, or even if we have kids, well, we should extend that assistance to individuals that need help. So I try my best to, if a young individual reaches out to me and they want to have a conversation, or they ask some advice or whatever, I try to find time as best as I could. I'm not able to all the time, but as best as I could, I try to find the time to give them those moments, right? Give them that encouraging word, give them a lesson from my experience, or have them look at it from a different perspective, right? With what I say, because that's me knowing that they're asking this because they're seeking help, right? They want to be better kids. They want to do something different than they may be seeing amongst their friends groups or in their communities. But it takes us as men to recognize that these questions that kids are asking us aren't haphazardly being asked, right? These are intentional questions where they may not even be asking a direct question. They may ask an introductory question to where they want to get to another topic, but they trying to feel us out as men, right? And they're seeing, well, can I start the conversation like this? And I think if we can just recognize these opportunities that kids give us, especially young boys, I think we'll have the in to really assist these boys in their life's development.
I want to close it out now, and I want to say from your dad, this is something that I've always remember him preaching on. He says, a father is one who is present, observable, and someone you can emulate. So I think when you are looking to see the characteristics of a father, ask yourself that. Am I present? And present meaning I'm not there, but am I really truly present?
Not just physically.
Exactly, yeah. Physically. Mm-hmm. I just think that's a good barometer for fathers today to use.
Absolutely. So, in all, don't do it alone. We can't do it alone, right? There's a danger of isolation. I've been saying, we need community, especially as men. We need communities as men. We need circles where we can be a part of, to where we can hold ourselves accountable, where we can sharpen ourselves, right? Proverbs 27:17 says, as iron sharpens iron, so does men sharpen each other. And that's what it's about. That's what it should be about, right? Us being able to commune as men and build relationships with each other so that we can better each other. I think that is the key to getting our communities back to where they should be. So I'm going to challenge men out there, right? I want you to ask yourself, what kind of man are you? I want to encourage you to heal from any trauma you may have experienced in your youth or in your young adulthood, and then be the solution that you see is needed, right? And that comes through mentoring, that comes through assisting the community, having conversations, creating the space for other men or other young boys to feel safe to open up and to be vulnerable. So that's a challenge I'm giving to all my, men this year. Let's be the solution that we want to be in our communities for 2025 and beyond. All right. So that brings us to the end of the pod, where I want to leave with you this milestone. And the milestone for today is simple. It's we need fathers and not influencers. We need men of standard and not men of trends. Be more of a father, right? Don't just try to influence a trail load of people, right? Be fathers to the ones that we are sent here to father, or the ones that we are responsible for fathering. And then don't be trendy, right? Don't try to follow every trend. Be men of standard. Be men of character, right? The whole stand firm in our belief system and in our convictions, regardless of what's going on around us, because that's what our kids are going to observe. That's what the young boys are going to observe and learn from, right? And implement in their development to the type of men that they're going to become. So let's be the solution that we want to see in our communities. All right. So it brings us to the end of this pod. Like I said, this one was a little heavy. Just from what I've been learning, reading, seeing over the past couple of weeks, I felt that this would have been a good topic to talk about. Hopefully, again, I was able to encourage men out there, and you take heed to the challenge that I put forth. As always, the vision of this pod is to entertain, educate, and elevate you miles high above your fears, your doubts, and any limitations that you may think exist, always knowing that those limitations only exist in your mind. All right, until next time, you guys stay blessed.